following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Talkin Cowboys. Streaming live from the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star in Frisco.
Handoff, Elliott plowing to the goal line. Barry, sacked by Moore. Prescott keeps it, and he bangs it in for the touchdown.
And now your hosts, Isaiah Stanback, Heckma Harrison, Rob Phillips, and Kyle Yeomans.
You know, it's really only been a week and a half. However, it seems like it's been forever because I haven't gotten to talk to my buddies here on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico. Heckma Harrison, Isaiah Stanback, Rob Phillips. I'm Kyle Yeomans. We are back after a little bit of a break. It was a 3-day weekend, so we had our weekend and MLK Day and honored him and kind of got through the weekend and got back into reality on Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday. It's a Wednesday edition here of Talkin Cowboys this offseason. So glad you're with us here on DallasCowboys.com. And guys, it's like I said about how it feels like it's been forever. It's not only because I missed you guys, but it's also because storylines have come out like crazy ever since we last recorded. Last time we recorded, we didn't even know for sure who our defensive coordinator was going to be. And now it is, of course, Dan Quinn. He has been hired as the defensive coordinator. We've got coaches interviewing with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I said coaches, multiple coaches have interviewed with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we've got a ton of NFL. I mean, Drew Brees may not even be playing football. We know Phillip Rivers not playing football anymore since the last time we chatted. But Rob, I mean, there's a ton of storylines to go through, but which one sticks out to you the most?
Well, my favorite storyline is we had all this time off. You squeeze in a vacation while all of us are working.
Hey, Rob, did you get an invite? Did you get an invite, Rob?
I did not. Did you, Isaiah? Heck,
No, heck, did you? I definitely didn't.
I wasn't in on that one.
No, me neither.
I'll give him this. He kept working. He did the draft show, but he also had a subtle flex. You know,
Yes.
Kyle, did you call ahead and say, "Can I get a room with a mountain view so I can show that off on the draft show?"
No, it was funny though because we walked right into that. It was a little casita. I mean, it was just like it was basically a clay building with clay floors and like the New Mexico tapestry all the way throughout it. And I walked in and I saw the really big window that faced toward the mountains. I was like, yeah, that's going to have to be my backdrop at some point.
Fellas, did you guys hear that twinge? I heard that twinge of Jalen Smith. He said a little wee-wee. Was there a wee-wee?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
and it was a clay building. No, bro, it was the Four Seasons. Don't lie to us.
It was not the Four Seasons. I'll guarantee you that one. It was a ton of fun. But yeah, I did. I missed you guys there, and I was thinking about Heckma the whole time I was on the mountain skiing. I was like, man, I miss Heckma Harrison the whole time. My buddy.
While you're on the mountain skiing, huh?
I could just imagine Heckma trying to ski. I want that visual more than anything.
No, you don't.
I feel like Rob and Isaiah could get it done, but I don't know.
No way
Heckma
I
would
can
be
do
interesting.
it.
I'm not messing with nature like that. Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rob, other storylines other than my impromptu vacation.
I'm sorry to throw us off. I had to squeeze that in.
No, it was good.
We got to start with Dan Quinn, right? We strongly hinted at that last week, and it turned out that it ultimately was the hire for defensive coordinator. And, you know, I think based on the situation they're in right now, I think it makes sense on a couple fronts. You know, they want to go back to a scheme that they've got more familiarity with. And you know, it's a bit of a 180 because they talked last year about how they wanted a different scheme and they wanted to be more multiple. Well, I think there could be some multiplicity within this scheme, but I think it is largely a 4-3 scheme that players have played in and been familiar with. And we'll see what happens this offseason with the offseason program. There were rumblings from NFL Network yesterday that this might be another virtual offseason program. If that's the case, I think it makes sense to have a veteran hire at that position. Now, you know, I was saying Marvin Lewis would have been another candidate on my list anyway, along with Dan Quinn. A veteran hire that knows how to get his system really across, has been in this position for a few years. And so I think it makes sense for what the Cowboys need to do, and that's a quick fix along with upgrading their personnel.
Heckma?
Well, I mean, look, we talked about it at length and about Dan Quinn, and obviously now he's our defensive coordinator. I'm interested to see how all of this goes back to the scheme that we were playing 2 years ago. Personnel-wise, we've made some changes. We've gone into the draft and we've drafted guys that were 3-4 guys and now 4-3 guys. You know, there's so much that's going to go into it, but there are a lot of players there are a few players that we have right now that are going to directly benefit from the hire of Dan Quinn, and one being Tank Lawrence. Just going back to who he was, I thought that it was a mistake to have him in a bicycle position and all of that. I think it just changed his game, and you saw him slowly coming into himself as the season progressed, you know, switching sides and doing different things that they had him doing within the defense. But again, to me, there's so many things to unpack with this Dan Quinn hiring, going back to a system that other guys will let go of. But again, he's our defensive coordinator. We're going to play that 4-3, the cover 3 scheme that he's so famous for in Seattle. And hopefully, again, guys, we have the personnel fit to get that done.
Well, y'all know I'm excited about it. Coach Quinn, he's a good dude. I know him. He's awesome. I don't know him, but I've had him as a coach. And he's a good dude. He's a good dude, and I love his energy. I love the fact that he establishes a culture. He establishes a culture of energetic, young, hungry, determined players that play as a team. And I like that. That's one thing I like about him. That's one thing that's consistent about him. I know we can go back to Atlanta and talk about, you know, the success or lack thereof. But the reality is they had success. They just didn't finish things. And that's something they got to figure out. But look where he took Atlanta from, right? He took Atlanta and gave them an opportunity to win a doggone Super Bowl. So there's not too many coaches that can say that. But I'm excited about him. I'm excited about the guys that we had that were inefficient this year on our current roster. I'm excited about their potential future. Guys like Jalen Smith, a guy that I freaking was hard on this year. I think he flourishes in a Dan Quinn system. You know, I think Van Der Esch flourishes in a Dan Quinn system. You start thinking about guys that Quinn's had the opportunity to work with and the development that they've had. Guys like to play for him. So I'm also excited about some of the free agents that are going to want to come here and play as well.
So wait a minute. Let me ask this. So are you saying that Jalen can mimic KJ Wright?
Don't do that. 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 But what I am going to say is, they have an opportunity. Now, I don't want to start throwing a bunch of rumors and stuff out there, right? Because I don't have that kind of information.
He's a free agent.
If I'm the GM, right? Which I'm not. But I would take a close look at Jalen Smith's contract. I would take a close look at Jalen Smith's contract because if you know Van Der Esch is going to be your middle linebacker, KJ Wright is a free agent. KJ Wright is familiar with the system that Dan Quinn's going to run. KJ Wright is not going to get the money that he wants out of Seattle. He's not. It's really going to come down to does he want to stay there and be loyal and playing with his dog Bobby, but he's earned the right to make some money. So if you can move some money around and get a guy who's proven and who understands the system that you're trying to get across, who's a proven leader in this league, then obviously there's options there. So I think that there's going to be I say all that to say there's going to be a good amount of guys who want to come play here in Dallas, not only because of the Dallas Cowboys, but also because of who's now in charge of them on the defense.
I like that. I think there is an added element to hiring a guy with the name of Dan Quinn and with the resume of Dan Quinn. If you went out and hired maybe a younger defensive coordinator or somebody who hadn't been in that position prior, you might not have that kind of pedigree where you can say, I want to go get this guy because he's played for me and he's done this, and I know he can do this still. And I know last week, Heckma, you were pretty down on a guy like Dan Quinn. You were not in favor of having Dan Quinn come in. You wanted the new. You wanted that, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And I had my skepticism about Dan Quinn, and I still do. But ultimately, how does his scheme and how does his resume line up to allow you to be better instantly on defense? Because I feel like that's what this hire does.
I don't look. I'm very skeptical about it. I mean, because we had a defense that gave up historic numbers, right? And so you have to ask ourselves, with all the built-in excuses of COVID-19, had Dan Quinn been hired or fired in 2019 and hired in 2020 by Mike McCarthy, would he have suffered the same fate as Mike Nolan, even with the familiarity with the old system? I know that people completely take this antiquated way of coaching, hiring coaches and going back and comparing players, but there's no way that you're going to sell me on the fact that Donovan Wilson is a Cam Chancellor equivalent. And if you can convince me that, you could possibly sell me oceanfront property in Nebraska, because
probably.
I don't see it. You know, I just don't. And I think that, you know, the one hard sell for me on this is that Mike McCarthy sold the Jones family on this new Dallas Cowboys of 2020, and now we're going back to the 2019 defense. And I just, you know, I have problems with that, but I want to give it time to work. Dan Quinn all of his accomplishments, his resume, everything that's out there on him is proven, right? But there's also another side to this where you see his defense or his team against Atlanta giving up big leads in big games. There are other things as well. But again, for this defense, what Michael Jordan said, the ceiling is the roof. You know, the sky is the limit, right? There's nowhere to go but up for this defense. So, I mean, as a Cowboy fan, obviously all of us are just, you know, excited about, you know, the possibility of having something better.
Well, and you said we're going back to that 2019 defense, and I feel like I have to throw this in there. This isn't exactly that 2019 defense. This isn't Rod Marinelli. I think it's a good in-between, Rob, right? Whenever you look at the scheme, I mean, there's going to be some multiple from a Dan Quinn. It's just not going to be what Mike Nolan brought to the table. It's not going to be quite that hybrid, that nickel front that you're going to see from a Mike Nolan, more so than what you saw from Rod Marinelli.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how it takes shape, because his history is largely 4-3, cover 3, you know, single high safety defense. And we've seen that here, obviously, with Chris Richard being a former Seattle assistant too when he was here. Right. So there's variations of it, but to your point, he's worked in places where he was a D-line coach with the Jets when they ran a 3-4. He worked for Nick Saban when they were a multiple defense in Miami.
Yes.
They were a 3-4 hybrid scheme at Florida when he was their DC for a couple years before he went to Seattle and they won Super Bowl. So he's been in different schemes, and I think in today's NFL, you have to be different. You can't play just so plain and say, hey, we're going to beat you because we're so talented. And that kind of goes back to Heckma's point. It does come down to players. And so I think what they're trying to do is, you know, it's another uncertain offseason. I mentioned, you know, we'll see how virtual it is. Bring in some familiarity. Get the communication right. Get everybody on the same page. That was such a problem last year beyond the talent level. You know, just being assignment sound. And maybe with a familiar scheme, they can do that. But I think it's going to be a couple years before they probably get the personnel where they want it to be. They just need to be okay on defense and hope your offense is healthy and really, really good. And then that's how you win games next year. That's how I see it anyway.
Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you on that. But, you know, again, we obviously have to see what the salary cap situation is going to be. Yeah. And I think that they have a lot of self-analysis, a lot of looking on the interior this year to figure out exactly who they want to retain. I think that you have to figure that up. You have to figure out what type of hits those potential moves are going to have on your cap. And, you know, you go out there and you acquire some guys, like you said, Rob, that are familiar with the system. I hear and I understand and I don't disagree with you, Heck, on some of those formats. However, I know on the inside the culture aspect, and that's so important. It's so important. And regardless if you're in person, regardless if you're virtual, it's contagious. The type that what he does, what he brings is contagious, and I think that you can tell that this year was a great example of the lack of energy, the lack of continuity that this defense, particularly this defense, had. And then I think you can look at some of the other defenses that Coach Quinn has coached in the past, and you can at least see, even if the players aren't exceptional, right? Look at the energy. Look at the energy difference of his players, man. And I think that's something that's we can really grasp onto.
Heckma?
I mean, I get it. And Isaiah, he's your guy, and you have that. You have familiarity. You know him, right? Just for me, especially looking at this roster and the depth that we had at certain positions, it wouldn't have mattered, man, if he came in last year and tried to implement this or had the same system, that the communication was the same. You just had guys that can't play. Guys that can't cover. If you're talking about a cover 4 scheme that you even alluded to, Isaiah, that's one of the easiest schemes to master. We couldn't do that. Right. Let's communicate. Let's talk. Let's stop anything from having the Antonio Gibson HOV to the end zone. Those we were just getting gashed in the running game. We were getting guys that were getting put on their nameplate. And I don't care about what kind of energy you have as a coach. If you have guys that can't play, that can't get it done, linebackers that can't get to the ball, those things are going to rear their head again. And so regardless of him having energy or what have you, you still are in a position where you're going to have guys that can play the way that you want to. Dan Quinn has a one-gap scheme. Guys are going to have the opportunity to blow and go, but you have guys up front right now that have played in a different scheme that they're going to have to get used to playing in his.
I agree on half of what you said. Cool. I agree on half of what you said. And the reason why I agree, either you have players or you don't have players. That I agree on. However, what your statement also is indicative of saying that somebody's coaching style they're unable to get across the same information in a different form depending on their coaching style. And I disagree with you in that regard, because I think Coach Quinn and other great coaches, other coaches that you may be touted as great or really good, they are able to get across information in a different way that's digestible by those players, right? So I can receive information from you differently than I can receive information from Rob or even Kyle, right? You guys can try to get across the same message, but I can, by you teaching it to me, I receive it, and all of a sudden, oh, now I understand it, and I can go out and apply it, right? Yeah. The way in which you teach me to communicate, right? All communication is not the same. Right, you teach me to communicate a certain way. Now all of a sudden we have no different in baseball, right? You got all these doggone signals and everything else, right? When I was in New England, we had so many doggone hand signals. We didn't talk on the field. There was no talking. It was an eye wink. It was a head nod. It was one of these. It was all kinds of different stuff. It was a Celtic. It was all kinds of stuff. It's different, right? Same players. But you convey the message differently, and guess what? Now you get different results on the field. So I agree with you that you need the players, but I disagree with you by saying that we don't have the players that could do it if we have the proper teacher in place.
The one thing I would add to that is, guys talked about in December when they started playing better defensively, guys would say, look, we kind of finally understand what we're supposed to do. I don't think under a Dan Quinn scheme that would have been kind of a continuation of the Rod Chris scheme to a certain extent, I don't know if guys would have been talking like that deep into the season. But I agree with you, too. Like Isaiah said, I agree with you that there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of guys with expiring deals, and they've got some spots they got to look at. And I don't think you can do it all in one off season. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it takes shape.
Well, and I also kind of want to look at some of the guys who are going to be back here that are going to benefit. I mean, Heckman, you mentioned it in your opening statement about DeMarcus Lawrence. I think that's a guy who certainly will benefit from having Dan Quinn rather than maybe going out of a 2-point stance and having to play with Mike Nolan's scheme of defense. But then you look at guys like Jalen Smith, like Isaiah said earlier. Could Jalen Smith be better? He might be worse in this system. The defensive tackles, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to create pressure up front. And that's something that we saw from Mike Nolan's defense. It allowed them to really kind of take the forefront, and they didn't do so very well. They also weren't necessarily healthy throughout much of the season as well. But heck, well, if you look at these players and you look at some of these individual Jimmies and Joes to go along with the X's and O's, is there anybody that sticks out that you can look at and say they are definitely going to be better in this system as opposed to maybe last year?
Yeah, well, I mean, guys like Anthony Brown, right? I think Anthony Brown will be able. It's going to be for a guy with his athletic skill set to pick up, cover 3 is pretty simple. It's a third of the field from the numbers to the boundary. I think our Diggs is going to benefit greatly. Yeah, Trayvon Diggs is going to benefit greatly as well in the cover 3 system. I mean, I think he could do it all. He's one of the guys that you have that can do pretty much anything, but he's going to have to get better as well. Linebacker-wise, I mean, Leighton Vander Esch now, he's just going to be gap responsible. And I think taking a lot of the other reading part out of it will simplify. And these are words that we're going to start using in the offseason, that it's going to be a simplified defense where guys aren't going to have to think and read and react all at the same time. So maybe that's the case. I think going back 2 years from 2019, especially for Jalen Smith, you start seeing offensive linemen get to him at the second level and he not be effective. But Mike Nolan came in and the whole premise was that we're going to put Jalen Smith in a position to be a player, right? He'll be able to run free and not have guys on him. But with Dontari Poe in his face, there's nothing he could do. He was still marginalized as a player. And so now we bring in a coach that is going to make him better, but I still feel like you still have some of the same woes with Jalen Smith in coverage versus tight ends. Sure. That's just not his game. It doesn't exist there. So Randy Gregory, I think he'll benefit greatly in this system. So there are a few guys that but for the most part, Dan Quinn is going to have to get his guys in. We know that he likes a certain style of player, and I'm sure Isaiah knows this with the more taller, rangier secondary guys, but it's going to be a few changes, wholesale changes on our defense.
Isaiah?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's going to be change.
Yeah, agree with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been agreeing today. No, there's going to be change. I mean, but the moral of the story is, you got a new D coordinator. You got to look at your personnel, not only in your players but also in your coaches, your assistant coaches. Do you have the right guys in place? Are there going to be any changes there? And then obviously you got to turn to the draft. You got to turn to the draft and say, hey, what the heck are we going to do there? What position do we have the greatest need of? There's a lot of things that have to happen, but overall, I'm pretty excited about this guy. Obviously, I know him a lot more than I know some of the other candidates out there, but I think that he bodes well for this cultureless team right now.
One of the biggest worries that I have about his scheme and Jalen Smith is exactly what Heckma said earlier, is covering tight ends and going back into coverage. Because if you look at a cover 3 scheme, where's the weakness? It's on the hash marks. It's right up the hash marks.
Yeah, but when KJ came in, KJ couldn't cover with a blanket. I just tell you, he couldn't put a blanket on a baby.
Neither can Jalen Smith. So
no, for sure.
There.
Yeah, for sure. But but he's able to get better though. He can get better. He can be coached. Okay. He can be coached. Right in his current state, I agree. Trust me, y'all know I agree. However, when you have athletic ability, which I don't think anybody discounts that Jalen does, right? We realize that he's not as agile guy as we thought he was.
Change of direction.
Right, exactly. Okay. But I know that the strength and conditioning coach, right, who's now in place, I know he focuses on that a lot because I had him in New England. So that will be better than it was. Hopefully they're in person for training, but also, obviously some better coaching. There's a lot of tips and tricks that are passed along from generation to generation in this league. And there's a lot of things that he can learn from. So maybe they bring in a veteran guy that can play alongside him. Who knows? We'll see.
No matter what we do in the draft or free agency, we have to get guys
absolutely
that come off the porch ready to play. This is what you do. No more project guys. We got to get it. We cannot miss Will McClay and staff. They're going to have to get this right with guys that can implement, get in right now and play. And with everything that's happening with the draft and what came down from the letter from the NFL about the combine and all of that, it's going to be a tougher job to evaluate, look at these guys. But what that's going to force guys to do is go back to the old way of just you got to put it on film. You cannot go into the combine, lift 225, 35 times like Isaiah did, and get drafted.
Oh, man. And Heckma alluded to it. There was news about the combine. There was also news that Philadelphia was going to interview Kellen Moore and John Fossil. We're going to take a break. When we come back, could be a couple more coaching changes. How could that affect this current roster? And then also, how will the combine affect the offseason program for the Cowboys as opposed to what it did last year? When we come back here on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
Back here on Talkin' Cowboys, presented by Geico. We're just continuing from the break, carrying over. Heckman doesn't know what standby means at all.
I'm sorry.
I mean, you got to learn what standby means. Anyways, but we're back here on Talkin' Cowboys, and whether you're watching from home or you're cheering in the stands with Essilor lenses, you can see every exciting play. Book an appointment at your local Essilor experts and see what Essilor can do for you. See more, do more, Essilor. And we'll talk about the Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds, but I feel like this wouldn't be a segment to do that when Heckman just doesn't listen. So we'll talk about that coming up here in a little while. But we'll get to that one in a second. Heckman did allude to it a couple moments ago about the changes to the Combine. And Rob, I mean, I know you talked about this yesterday in our group chat, but the Combine is not going to be the Combine this year. No meeting at Indianapolis, no in-person workouts, or at least for a centralized location. All the workouts are going to have to be done virtually or at the different college campuses, and then the meetings are all virtual, much like they were for the 30-day visits last year. And then all of the in-person medical examinations are limited. So there's only a couple medical examinations in which will be limited. And yeah, Isaiah already knows that that's the most important part of the Combine, because that's why really you do it, to gather that information on these prospects. But Rob, how is this specifically going to affect the Cowboys and the way that they go out and look for personnel?
I don't know that it affects the Cowboys any different than anybody else. There's part of me that feels like the whole draft process, I'm not overrating it, but I think that we put so much on the Combine and being in person at those workouts, and I think it matters. I think, if all of us have had job interviews, and I think it matters to have that in-person element to it. But they did some of those interviews, some of those top 30 visits virtually, because we were starting the pandemic back then in the spring. So they have some familiarity with that. I agree with you. I think the medical checks are the biggest thing, and that's going to be restricted, obviously. But I don't know how much the interviews really factored that much. I guess they're not going to be in person to see the workouts. So there's that. But to me, it's not just going forward. It's also the past few months. I think the scouts have been affected on what they've been able to do in terms of getting out on the road and seeing guys. So it's just all 32 teams are dealing with it. And I think the Cowboys, at least their stability in the front office with Will McClay and their scouting department, their personnel guys, they know what they're looking for. And even with Dan Quinn coming in at defensive coordinator, there's some scheme familiarity, like we talked about. They know what they're looking for. I think that benefits them instead of a new front office coming in. And there's a few teams that are like that.
Yeah, there is familiarity. And even last year, whenever there was kind of the turnover from a coaching staff, it was still a good enough draft to where you felt good about it afterwards. And even after their rookie season, you can say that guys like CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Biadasz, Neville Gallimore, Trayvon Diggs, I mean, those are 4 guys by themselves that made significant impacts. But Isaiah, whenever you look at kind of the medical evaluations and the meetings, how much do those play a factor into maybe where you might end up via the draft?
Huge. Huge. The in-person meetings are awesome because you get to sit down face-to-face with the coaches, GMs. That's awesome, right? They get a true understanding of who you are. I never forget my interview with Chucky and how he just sit there and stare me down in a quiet room with him and Doug Williams in there. And I blinked out on Doug Williams' name after he asked me if I knew who the first black quarterback was to the Super Bowl. No. But I was like, of course I know who it is. I was like, and I was like, I told Chick, I said, he's in the room. He said, yes, he is. So that interview is fun. But like I said, that can be done virtually. The part that sucks for the teams, the injuries. Obviously, I came out the draft with my Liz Frank injury. The same year, Adrian Peterson was coming out with the collarbone. So I remember spending hours upon hours, and me and Adrian Peterson, after everybody's on bus all the way back to the hotel, him and I are sleeping back to back because we're spending 5-6 hours taking MRIs and X-rays just because they wanted to see every little square inch of our body. They wanted to prod on us. They wanted to turn, twist and turn, and put their hands on you. It's physically excruciating. I remember leaving one of those appointments with all the trainers, and they sit you on a table. You literally sit on a training table, and there's all the teams are around you in this big old conference room, and they put you up there. They call your name out, and all the teams that are interested in you come out there. The doctors come out there, and there's literally like 5-6 doctors on you. They're all pulling on you, testing out whatever injuries you may have had. They have every track record from your college. Every time you got a IV, every time you got an aspirin, they have all that information, and they're checking you out just because you are an investment to them. So the fact that they can't do that this year is huge because that gives them the understanding and the confidence that you're either going to be okay coming off of an injury that may have bothered you and been lingering over the past years, or you're just in perfect health. So I think that's going to hurt some teams, but also it's going to benefit some players because now guys get some opportunities that they probably wouldn't have got had they had their hands on them.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like maybe with the current situation of this, the connections that are made by this front office are ultimately going to pay dividends? Because if they're not going to have these in-person medical exams, you're going to have connections, right? You're going to have that networking and the friendships outside of your own organization and to these schools. We've known in the past that Will McClay and his entire staff really leans toward these bigger schools like the Alabamas and the Ohio States for some of their players. Maybe those connections are going to pay dividends for them. Heckma.
Yeah, I mean, the coaching fraternity is a very big fraternity, and these scouts, they talk amongst each other all the time. So they're not going to miss on guys at all. I think the one thing that what like Isaiah was saying, and I think that Indianapolis has is the hospital right there that has state-of-the-art equipment. And maybe that's one of those things that's going to be missing. But I really think that guys are going to earn their keep this year. You're going to find out the good scouting departments from the bad ones by the guys just not being able to go and cherry pick the players that are putting up those numbers. And so, look, I think when I think about the Star, there's a part of the Star where they show Gil Brandt's notes on players. I mean, these are handwritten notes. And so it's been done before, where guys had all the technology and the laser timing and all of that. So I look for the ones that are true to it to actually earn the keep, and it's going to be a lot made of evaluation, looking at tape. And how about the guys that opted out, that you have to go back 2 years to look at their tape? So there's a lot of things to be considered, and how much weight is it going to be on playing this year versus last year, but also just making sure that all of your notes and communicating on guys. And the one thing that this front office and coaching staff and scouting department, they're connected in that way where these guys are meeting with each other and finding out the type of players that they want to bring in. So we talk about culture. Who are those guys? And I believe that that's the part that we really should lean heavily on, because we're building that culture, and Coach Mike McCarthy knows the kind of guys that he wants here.
I like that. I think that's a ton of the worries. I think that's a ton of what we need to look at for the Cowboys. And also, like we kind of talked about in the first segment, continuity is going to play a big factor in the way that you're going to be successful here. But are we speaking too soon in terms of what that continuity may be? And I say that because we've had a couple coaches this past week that have been rumored to have done interviews with the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll start with Kellen Moore here, Rob. I mean, what have you heard latest on Kellen Moore? I heard that he took the interview, but ultimately it was for the head coaching position. What else have you heard about our offensive coordinator who a couple weeks ago we thought might have gone to the college ranks? Now he's getting a head coaching interview at the same division.
Kellen Moore is hot. He's sizzling right now. Man, Boise State, now Philly. Who haven't they interviewed at this point?
I think Isaiah got an interview for their defensive coordinator job.
Just saying.
It's a wide net as we've seen online. They've been linked to over a dozen names probably. Haven't heard anything other than the fact that yes, he was scheduled to interview yesterday for their opening, and it honestly makes sense. It makes sense given not knowing what not having ties to Philly's organization. It makes sense on the outside of okay, if you've got to fix Carson Wentz, given the financial commitment you made to him. Even if you're not going to commit to Carson Wentz, you've got Jalen Hurts, who's a young quarterback with a lot of talent. Bringing in a top offensive mind, a young offensive mind, which Doug Peterson has been that as well, makes a lot of sense. And Kellen Moore's not the only offensive guy that's been linked to the job, but I would see why they would want to at least pick his brain and see where he's at. I don't know if that's ultimately the direction they're going to go. I'd kind of. There are other names that have been linked stronger to that job, but it's a pattern in their interview process that makes a lot of sense.
The other name is John Fossil. I don't know if he's actually taken the interview yet or even been offered an interview, but the report was from NBC Sports, and they said interested in interviewing Cowboys special teams coordinator John Fossil. Isaiah, I know we actually kind of grew to really enjoy John Fossil throughout the latter parts of the season. At the beginning, it was definitely wishy-washy, but the job that he did this year, I think, couldn't be understated.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact he came in aggressive, and he is who he is. And I'm an energy guy, so he brought that energy. I think that as a special teams coordinator, your job is to really push the envelope to make sure that you have the personnel, make sure that you guys understand the schemes, and then obviously push your coach to take risks. And I think he did that. I just don't think that he expected the coach to say yes to as many things as he pushed on. But I mean, what you asked of a special teams coordinator, I think he did. I really think he came in and did a good job. I just think that Coach McCarthy definitely should have punched the brakes a couple of times on him. But the fact that it's kind of interesting that he's being asked to go somewhere else. That's kind of odd to me. Mm-hmm. Really, really odd. But I don't know. Who knows?
Which one would be a bigger loss for the Cowboys, Kellen Moore or John Fossil?
Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, Kellen Moore. Yeah, but Kyle, I just want to say nothing surprises me about the Eagles and them wanting to bring Kellen Moore in. They're spying on us, dog.
You think so? You think so?
I know what they're doing. But when you look around the NFL at the guys that have been hired, you see a league that is going younger. You see everybody's trying to find that new boy genius, the McVay, the Shanahans of the world, and they know that's where the league is going. They're getting rid of a lot of that old blood in the coaching ranks. But, it wouldn't surprise me if in the next couple of years that Kellen Moore landed himself a head coaching job based off of the numbers that he's putting up here. But when you talk about Bones Fossil, also a great coach, Harbaugh in Baltimore started off as a special teams coach. So there's history there of special teams coaches being hired as head coaches in this league. So, look, for the Cowboys right now, you talk about losing Kellen Moore and also, the Dak perspective, that would be huge for us to find that replacement who can bring in the same verbiage that I think kept that familiarity in the offensive scheme intact this year with Kellen Moore. So it's interesting.
And, I think Kellen has critics. I think everybody sits on their couch and says, I would have called this play. That's part of being a fan, and so he has his critics. But I think a lot of it, Heck's right. Like, He's a young coach. I think he's on the uprise. He's going to get better. Kind of like we talked about Dak. Negotiations with Dak started a year and a half ago, whatever. And you're going to be paying Dak for what you think he can develop into. And I think that's what it's the same deal with Kellen as a play caller. And eventually, I agree. I think he's going to be a head coach. Don't forget, Sean Payton, before he came to the Cowboys in 2003, he was with the Giants, and he had his play calling duty stripped with the Giants, and so as a very young coach, and I think he's going to head to the Hall of Fame one day. So, coaches can get better too, and I think Kellen will.
Got two things for you, Kyle. I think we have a new D-line coach. I think I just saw that come across.
Yes.
But also, I know we posed this question whenever it came up about Boise State. Does Kellen Moore leave? Can you turn down? You can turn down a college job, but can you turn down the head coaching job for Philly?
No. There's only 32 of those jobs. You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yep. I agree. I was just making sure y'all weren't crazy.
I mean, you could. you could. Jason Garrett, the rumors that Jason Garrett had an opportunity in Baltimore and when he was the OC here and waited and stayed. So, but yeah, I agree. It's hard to turn down a very rare opportunity.
Yeah, you just don't.
Rob, tell us about this new defensive line coach.
His name is Aiden Durd. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. We talked about familiarity. Second assistant coach to join Dan Quinn on the defensive side of the ball from Atlanta. He's a young coach. He worked with the linebackers, I believe, in Atlanta, and he's English. He's a former NFL Europe player. So he's a young coach taking over that position. Don't forget, Dan Quinn, he is schooled in coaching D-line, so I would imagine he might be pretty hands-on as well as being the DC to help with that position. But also Joe Witt, who interviewed for the DC job, is also expected to come aboard in an untitled role, probably to help in the secondary, obviously.
I think that's interesting because we talked about Joe Witt last week as one of the names that was potentially going to be the coordinator. And you not only get Dan Quinn, but you get Joe Witt to come along as well. I think that's kind of a win-win for Coach McCarthy, don't you think, Heckma?
No, I do. I mean, he's bringing over a lot of his guys, and you kind of expected. And the rumors were that Witt and Quinn are kind of conjoined at the hip as far as a hire. So it doesn't surprise me that these guys are coming on, whether it be in coordinators or passing game coordinator, all of those things that the guys are positions that guys are getting. But it's important that these guys figure out a way to get this defense playing again. Defensive line coach from NFL Europe. He has his work cut out for him because they're changing schemes, and he's going to have a bunch of guys that he's going to have to coach up. And like you said, Rob, Quinn is probably, because of his roots as a defensive line coach, going to be really hands-on there. So interesting hire. Can't wait to talk to him.
Yeah, this is going to be fun to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Now, we're going to go ahead and step aside for our second break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about what the Cowboys could potentially learn from the 4 teams that are still left in the NFL playoffs. I think there's a ton of lessons to be learned from each one of those 4 organizations. We're going to see how the Cowboys can take some things from that. When we come back on the other side of the break, you're listening to Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico.
We're back with a tasty treat that's sweeping airwaves and taste buds. It's new Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda. Let's take a listen.
Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda's here. A new combo that's music to my ears, okay. Let's play. Cream Soda and Dr. Pepper time. Pour it in a glass of ice.
Ah, music to my ears and mouth. New Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda.
A delicious duet.
There's nothing as unique as our eyes, which is why Essilor pioneers ways to make lenses as unique as you. Verilux for super sharp vision, Essential Blue for protection, and Crizal for freedom from glare. 3 cutting-edge solutions in a single unique lens. So whatever your needs, insist on Essilor. Visit your local Essilor experts and find the perfect lens for you. See more, do more, Essilor.
The Cowboys way, where 16 Hall of Famers and 5 championships shows us what success looks like. Where turkey is always the second best part of Thanksgiving Day. Where we are all defined by one single thing, the star. Where we as fans know it's our job to keep the tradition going. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank of the Dallas Cowboys, and to support the quest of living life the Cowboys way.
Copyright 2020, Bank of America Corporation.
Dear, it's 1908. Don't you think we should get electricity?
And stop using candles to see at night.
It's just electricity lights up the room fast. It's more reliable than candles blowing out, and people seem to love it nationwide.
Well, candles are...
Dear, did you just run into the wall?
Nope. May I have a new candle, please?
Historically, switching to new technology is a no-brainer. Today, it's AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure, and nationwide. Switch to AT&T 5G. It's not complicated. 5G requires compatible plan. May not be in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
Back here for our final segment of Talking Cowboys here on this Wednesday morning. And whether you're listening to Talking Cowboys or you're working out with Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds, you can experience audio at a whole new level with Bose Quiet Comfort earbuds, the official earbuds of the Dallas Cowboys. And hey, he's got them turned on this time. Thank goodness Heckma Harrison's got those things turned on.
I
do. Oh, Rob Phillips, we've got Isaiah Stanback. I'm Kyle Youmans in the back. Final couple minutes here of Talking Cowboys. Got about 15 minutes.
Wait, we got to hear Heck say it. What's it like, Heck?
Say it.
Oh,
come on,
yeah.
Heck.
What does it sound like, Heck?
It's like a symphony in my head. I had to clear my throat first, dog.
Yeah, you had to get it all ready to go. I like it.
So good.
4 teams left in the NFL playoffs. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs, to no surprise. We've got the Buffalo Bills. That's your AFC Championship game. In the NFC Championship game, it's still 2014, apparently, because it's Packers led by Aaron Rodgers, and it's Tom Brady. Now, not with the Patriots and not in the AFC, but he's in the NFC with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what a surprise that has been. And really, kudos to everybody around that organization of putting a good roster together and allowing Tom Brady to be successful. The former teammate of Isaiah Stanback. That's probably going to be on his Hall of Fame bust, I think, Isaiah. It's going to say Tom
You're
Brady,
right.
Former teammate of Isaiah Stanback.
Definitely didn't make that list. Definitely didn't make that list.
Now, whenever it comes to these 4 teams, I mean, it's really 4 different blueprints on how to win and how to get to where they are at this very moment. Now, I think probably the most similar blueprints are most likely the AFC Championship game with Buffalo and with Kansas City. They were built similarly, but just at different time periods. But whenever you look at these 4 teams, Heckma, what is something that the Cowboys can take from them and how to learn how to get back to an NFC and a conference championship game?
Well, I mean, man, this whole playoff series to me has been separating the guys with pea shooter arms from the guys that have bazooka arms. And the Final Four is all bazookas. And if you want to have any success in the NFL, in this NFL, with spread out and is past all these passing yards that they're putting up, you're going to have a guy with the arm that can facilitate all of that. And you see that with these top 4 teams and just the numbers that they've put up this year. I mean, going back to the matchup with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, boy, that is a showcase of 2 of the most elite quarterbacks to do it. And that's what I'm really excited about. But Josh Allen is doing a phenomenal job in Buffalo. And they won that game against Baltimore, and it was just a hard game to watch, especially with Lamar Jackson not being able to stretch the field. And that's something as a young quarterback, and I'm pulling for him. But it doesn't matter. If he can have the MVPs, all of those things, man. But if you cannot stretch the field, teams are just going to load up on you, especially in on a winner-take-all kind of a situation. But talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think it was their defense that really impressed me, and just the Honey Badger and his ability to turn that run back in, right? And it just shows you what you can do when you have a safety that can play like that at the line of scrimmage. And it was just masterful what Spagnuolo did, and those last couple of defensive play calls was just a Picasso, man. They did a really good job, and so I'm looking forward to that game as well. So the Cowboys could learn by getting their A1 quarterback and also getting a safety that can turn the run back in.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Heck. I marked down defense and get yourself a franchise quarterback, and that's why the Cowboys are trying to re-sign Dak Prescott long term, because that's what it takes. I went back and I looked at like the last 10 seasons, okay? The final 4 in the championship games. So that's 40 slots according to my math, my terrible math. And 25 of those spots over the last 10 years have gone to just a handful of quarterbacks. It's Mahomes, it's Brady, it's Russ, it's Ben Roethlisberger, it's Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Eli Manning, and I threw Matt Ryan in there too, who's been an MVP and been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And mixed in there, those other 15 spots, you might have guys that sneak in, a Foles or a Kirk Cousins or Tannehill last year, but like that's rare. Garoppolo, it's not. If you want to get there year in, year out, you better have a really good quarterback. And for those that say, oh, draft one in the top 5, look at the NFC East. Look at Daniel Jones. The jury's still out on Daniel Jones. It's Carson Wentz, Mitch Trubisky, who lost in the first round this year. All really high draft picks. There is no guarantee. There's just no guarantee that it's going to work out for you. So if you think you've got a really good one who's going to be potentially a great one, keep him. Keep him around.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Handcuff him.
Yeah.
Isaiah?
2 things stick out to me. I think about the character of the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the character of the coaches and how the effect that they have not only on their team and their players, but also the second one is culture, right? And I use that word a lot, but it's important. It's important. I mean, you guys think about Green Bay. Green Bay used their first round pick on another quarterback. They use it on his freaking replacement.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give him any additional help in that regard, and look where they're still at.
You're right. That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Look where they're still at, right? So they could have easily gave him another, a CeeDee Lamb or something like that, right, to help him out. But they didn't. They didn't, because they know that at the root they're still good. They know that at the root they have a great coach. They know that at the root they have a great quarterback who is going to lead this team. And the culture of their team is to go out there and take young players and veteran players, put them on the field together, and everybody's going to do their job effectively to put them in a position to go after the Super Bowl every year, right? You go to Kansas City, Andy Reid. Andy Reid is Andy Reid, right? He is who he is. If you're going to play for Andy Reid, guess what? You're going to be tough, right? You're going to be energetic. You're going to be a team player. Nobody cares about your personal accolades. We all care about what we can do for the team. What's your contribution to this team? That's his culture out there. You go to Buffalo, right? You go out there, Buffalo, the new coach, right? New coach out there in Buffalo, right? And he's out there making things happen. And they're building their culture out there. You can tell it's tough, it's gritty, it's grinded out, right? When people come through us, they're gonna feel it no matter what happens, right? Young quarterback that's growing and developing, right? And then obviously you look at Tampa Bay. Well, we know what that's about. Bruce Arians is no nonsense, right? Straight, no chaser. And this is what you get. We are a tough team. They have a solid defense that doesn't get enough credit. They're about to get tougher with my boy from Vita Vea coming back, UW, coming on the D-line. So their defense is tough, and then they go out there and get the GOAT at quarterback, who everybody wants to play with. Why? Because of the culture that he establishes on that side of the ball. They know, these teams know who they are. They have identities. They're not soul searching, trying to figure out who they are. That's what the Cowboys need to pay attention to and try to pick up from these playoffs.
Well, how far are they from that? Because I feel like it's light years. I mean, at least after this season, right? I mean, Mike McCarthy can get to that point. We've seen that already. He can get to the point as a head coach to where he has that kind of control and that kind of swagger, I guess, underneath him. And you have a franchise quarterback in Dak Prescott that you have to lock up contract-wise. But surely that's something that's a priority for this Cowboys team this offseason. But outside of that, there really hasn't been that identity. There hasn't been that swagger. There hasn't been the kind of mindset that, hey, everyone's going to do their jobs. It's more of a, this is going to be a harsh word, but it's coddling. It's what it feels like. It feels like you coddle a lot of these players until they finally show something. Look at Donovan Wilson. Look at Donovan Wilson specifically. I mean,
I learned that word the last year.
I know you did.
Swaddle. Yeah, I love that word.
But you coddled Donovan Wilson for a year and a half, and then all of a sudden he's the best player on your defense the final 6 games of the year. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that's one example. There are plenty of those. But Isaiah, how do you get past that point to where it's expected to come in and do your job, whether you're a rookie and you're Trayvon Diggs? It's not expected yet here. But how do you get to that?
You know what? I wish we had looked behind the veil in terms of had a little bit closer look to their what their coaching staff does in practice and all those things this year. Obviously, COVID threw a curveball on that. However, from what we can see, I believe that Coach McCarthy was a little bit too complacent. He did not establish his will, establish his culture here. I think he needs to be a lot more hands-on. Does that mean him calling plays? I don't know, right? Maybe he'll get the opportunity because he might have an offensive coordinator here. But I think that he needs to enforce his will more because those teams that we talked about, those coaches just aren't in the background. You know, they're not just in the background. You know, they do their job. Bruce Arians does his job, right? He doesn't have to say he does speak up a little bit too much sometimes. but you feel that energy that he puts off, right? That vibe, that grittiness, you feel that with his team. Did you guys see his center? His center's a jerk. I love it, right? And I feel like that's him reincarnated on the field, right? And then you look at Buffalo, their coach, gritty, right? Andy Reid, guess what? He is calling those plays, no question about it, right? And you got Green Bay, LaFleur, or whatever his name is. I don't know what I said. Hey, he's out there calling plays too. So guess what? All those coaches have a direct impact on the results of what happens on the field. And I think that McCarthy came in and tried to give his coaches too much power. And I think he needs to really step into a lot more prominent role this year.
Rob?
No, that's interesting, and I agree with you. You know, and I think, COVID was weird in terms of trying to, I don't know, establish culture because you got to stay apart. And you got to do all these things with a mask and all that. I do think it was a weird year to try to do that, but I agree. I think you've got to put your stamp on what you want to do, and defensively they've got to do that too. They got to kind of start over and figure out how they want to approach that. So. The other thing I would add to piggyback on what Heck said, I'm just looking at these scores in the divisional round, and this season was all about offense, right? Well, defense still matters a little bit. The teams that lost over the weekend, Baltimore had 3 points, Cleveland had 48 in the first round, 17 against Kansas City. Tampa Bay beat New Orleans, had 20, and the Rams had 18. So, yeah, the Cowboys get healthy. They can put up a lot of points, but if they don't get their defense fixed, they can make the playoffs. But to keep playing into late January, your defense still matters.
Yep.
Yeah, you could talk about coddling these guys, swaddling these guys, whatever you want to, but they're just the signs of why this season was a failure, statistically and just in every way. You look at the injuries on our offensive line. There aren't any other teams that was decimated the way that our team was. And with retiring players, both of your tackles going down, losing your All-Pro right guard, all of those things that happen, and losing your star quarterback. And so I think we live in a world where we think that we could just plug and play guys and still get the same results, and that's not that way. I think, the Cowboys defense, if Dan Quinn could come in and do his job and these guys can get some stops, you were in games that you could have won, or if you were able to get some type of turnover or a stop. That was the problem. Even when we turned the ball over, teams were getting points off of our turnovers, and that's not a guaranteed thing. It's just because our defense couldn't stop anyone. And once Dak went out and we had our offensive problems and Ben DiNucci was doing the Uncle Rico and all of that, man, it was just going to be what it was going to be. And so we shouldn't be surprised that we're here. But just going on the positive note, building this defense, getting the kind of plays and the culture that Isaiah keeps going back to, I think it's important. And what is that culture? Dog culture, goon culture, guys that's going to come in and play football the way that it's supposed to be played. Not a whole bunch of guys that want to be soft body. That's just not what we're going to do. And so if you want to get to that championship level, if you're looking at the teams that are up there and you want to emulate and mimic what they do, look at the personnel that they play with.
Hey, it's not Friday, but I feel you, Heck.
Say it with your chest.
Say it with your chest, man.
Boys of them goons, huh?
It's the off season. We could still say it with our chest this off season. I love it.
I miss you guys, man.
And Heckma, you made a great point in the fact that injuries aren't excuses to a certain extent. But with the extent of what happened with the Cowboys this season, look at what happened in the AFC divisional round with Kansas City. You lose your guy. We would all agree that Kansas City is built maybe 3 times better than the Dallas Cowboys on both sides of the football, even if you take Patrick Mahomes out of the equation. That's exactly what happened. They took Patrick Mahomes out of the equation, and all of a sudden, Cleveland goes on a run. And if they had one more possession, probably would have won that game. Ultimately, they would have had. They just ran out of time.
Yeah.
Exactly. They ran out of time. Cleveland still would have won that game solely based on the fact that Patrick Mahomes was taken out of the equation, even though Cleveland was not nearly as good of a team as Kansas City. But that just shows the importance of having that leader, of having that franchise quarterback, and having somebody that you can rely on. And, of course, the Cowboys didn't have that for the final 12 weeks of the season because of what happened to Dak Prescott. So that's going to happen. That's always going to change the outlook of your football program and your football team. But, I mean, at the same time, you can't make those excuses every year. If the same thing happens in 2021, you have to be able to combat that, right?
Yeah, and if you lose your left tackle, your right tackle, your quarterback, you're in trouble every year, Kyle.
You've got to be better prepared.
Like right now, Kansas City is not prepared to go into the
I was thinking that too.
This is not going to happen. So you got people wanting to move the AFC Championship game the next Wednesday to give him a chance to play. So, I mean, the personnel is important. And when you have those guys that get it done for you and have the entire season, we cannot underscore their importance to your squad. It's just, it is what it is, man.
Yep. I mean, and it's something that the Cowboys are going to have to figure out this offseason. It's something that they've got to get done, I think, Dak Prescott. And next week when we're back on Monday at 11:30 Central Time, we're going to talk about Dak Prescott. What is the timeline for Dak and how worried and when should you be worried this offseason? How does this negotiation go and some of the important dates along for the offseason program for this Dallas Cowboys team? But that's going to do it for us here on Talkin Cowboys, presented by Geico. For Chris Beam back at the Star, for Isaiah Stanback, for Rob Phillips, and for Heckma Harrison, I'm Kyle.
There it is.
I'm in.
Oh, we're all doing it this time. That's it for us here on Talkin Cowboys. We'll see you on Monday.
Get your roll on, Kyle.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!